This could be the strongest ranger in Super Sentai history. Episode 2 of number 1 Sentai Gozyuger officially introduces Ryuugi, the Yellow Gozyuger. The first time we see him in this episode is in this shot towards the start alongside Rico, but we don't get officially introduced to him until he confronts Hiru later on. And he confronts him by playing the piano and singing. Not only that, but it's a song about the Tega Sword. And we do know from information from before the show even came out that Ryuugi is borderline occultist and just worships the Tega Sword and just loves everything to do with it. So sure, it makes sense that he's got a ballad, little hymn for the Tega Sword, you know? But what I think we really need to talk about with this scene is the fact that he just carries in the piano. He's got a keyboard, a full grand piano on his shoulder, pops it down, starts playing. Like, he is hella strong. Now, my assumption is that this is an effect of his Goju ring and his powers, but we actually don't really know if this is the situation. Like, maybe he just had these powers beforehand. So I know that Hiru has the howl, which, you know, he's Goju Wolf. It makes sense that he's got the howl. Rikyo doesn't really have a superpower from, or at least what we've seen in this episode, because he was introduced in this episode as well. Did a separate video on it, you can check it out if you want to. He doesn't necessarily seem to have a superpower that I'm aware of. So is this super strength something he had beforehand, or was it brought on by the ring? I'm sure we'll dive into that in the coming episodes. However, in the episode I did do about Goju Blue, I do talk about how he's a very great and coordinated fighter, unlike Hiru, who's a good fighter, but he's a bit more scrappy rather than coordinated. And on the topic of fighting, despite Ryugi's strength, he is so chill in this fight. He is so calm. He just sort of floats through the bell ends, which is a sentence. But he sort of maneuvers around them rather than actually fights with them. There's some hand-to-hand combat, don't get me wrong, but I mean, in this clip specifically, and even when he does the big ground pound, he's just so elegant with it. Like, it doesn't come off as a guy who has the strength that he has. He's also doing a lot of this. He likes just standing like this, very zen. Very mindful, very demure. Speaking of mindful and demure, I do have a Patreon page. Now, this is not by any means something you have to go and subscribe to, but it does mean that I get to do more content like this. And you guys get it early. You get early access to all my videos through the Patreon for just £3 a month, which is less than like a meal deal per month. I mean, especially where I live now, it's like £4.75 for a meal deal. If you hit the link in the description, I'll be redirected to the Patreon page. You get early access to these videos. There's even some exclusive content on there, and there will be more exclusive content in the future. But anyway, back to the video. Ryuugi is ready to throw hands with Hiru before... I'm gonna have to... these names are not sitting with me yet, are they? I'll get there. But yeah, they're about to fight before Rikyo steps in and basically tells them not to fight. And I wonder if that's gonna become a reoccurring theme. I wonder if there's gonna be a power complex, because obviously, as we've seen, Ryuugi is very strong and he worships the Tega Sword. And because, at least at this point, Hiru has had more of a relationship / bond with the Tega Sword, I wonder if that's going to become an issue, because we also know the character, I'm not entirely sure, but the actor who plays Ryuugi is the oldest of all of the Rangers in this series by about 10 years. So like, I wonder if that's going to play any sort of part. I wonder if that's going to be a thing going forward, because obviously we know they're all trying to be number one at certain things, but is he going to try and lead the team and take over in that regard? I don't know. He seems quite competitive. And speaking of the Tega Sword and being number one, which I suppose is the theme of the show anyway, the goal for this episode is to be the number one treasure hunter, and it's between the 3 Rangers and the bad guy who's called Treasure Hunt, ironically. So Hiru is using the Tega Sword to dig. He's got the sword and he's just digging into the ground until Ryuugi catches the sword with his bare hands. Giant Titan, god of all mechs, swinging his sword to the ground, and Ryuugi just catches it without breaking a sweat. Throws it aside, picks up a boulder and throws it at him, and then picks up a tree and throws it at him. I knew he was strong. We've just discussed the piano. That is nuts. He catches the sword and rips the tree from the ground and throws it. Crazy scenes. But then Ryugi's role kind of takes a stop for a little bit as we divert through the show. And then once the treasure hunt is over, the no ones are out, the bell ends are attacking. Hiru and Rico are fighting on the ground. They've henchined and they're fighting the bad guys. But Ryuugi doesn't. Instead, he summons the Tega Sword and he dons that sort of Die Ranger MMPR white looking cockpit suit, and he gets in the Tega Sword. Now, this is not something I'm fully aware of yet. Is there more than one Tega Sword, or is there multiple? Because there's more than one gold Tega Swords. We know there's at least 5, and we know there's a bunch of silver ones. But I was under the impression there's only one Tega Sword, and then, like we see in this sequence, the different elements of the Ranger's weapons grow and attach to the Tegazord to make it a bit more personal. As we see, the Tegazord opens up, his chest is glowing, and then it latches onto yellow. But in the intro, for example, we see a bunch of Tegazords. Now, I know this is just the intro, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's all canonized to the show in a way, but that's something I'm wondering. Because my impression was there's one Tegazord and the different parts attached to it to become for the different rangers, and then I assume when they all combine, it'll just be the one Tegazord with all the parts attached. Let me know in the comments if that's not true, if there's more information on that I'm not aware of. That's the vibe I'm getting. And can I just say as well, look at how just chuffed he is to be sat. Like, he is loving that he's there. No. Anyway, he's in that mech and he defeats the Mega Bell End. And then the next time we see him, it's actually in the place where Hoiru lives, because Hoiru basically lives in like an apartment on top of like a diner / restaurant. It turns out Ryuugi is the new manager now of that restaurant. So the owner has basically said, yeah, we need new management. We need to spice it up a bit. He's going to help us. And Rico is there as well. And just sort of, it's the way that they're going to be clearly keeping close to each other. I can see this restaurant becoming the base of operations, basically. And that's it. That's the end of episode 2 and the introduction of Ryuugi. Now, I personally do like him. I think he's a weird character, but by no means in a bad way. I love the dress sense. You know, the whole thing is going on about worshipping the Tegazord. It's fun. It's cool. It's very different to the other two characters we've seen so far. But it's like I said earlier, he could become a bit problematic with the worshipping of the Tegazord. It could make him try and force his way to be the leader of the team. It could mean that he tries to hog the Tegazord in terms of his powers. I don't exactly know where that's going to go. Has there been anything else in Sentai where there's somebody that's worshipped the power, or at least to the degree that we've clearly seen Ryuugi do so far? Let me know. And so far, out of the 3 we've met, so Hoiru, who is Goju Wolf, Rico, who is Goju Leon, and obviously now Ryuugi. Hear me out. Suits-wise, my favorite suit is Goju Leon. I love that shade of blue. His helmet design is my favorite as well. In terms of the actual characters we've met so far, Ryuugi is definitely my favorite. Hoiru, I think, is sick. He's been very predictable so far, and it's only episode 2, I know. He's like the wild card. He's the lone wolf. It all lines up. I feel like Ryuugi, so far in the story, has the most potential to be a menace, a wild card, a problematic, like I said. Like, I don't know. And whilst his suit is probably my least favorite, the gold on yellow isn't bad, but I just think the helmet looks a bit bland and boring to me. There could be an interesting team dynamic that revolves around this character. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Goju Yellow. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to start a conversation. And if you guys want to see my thoughts on Goju Blue, then click the video in the end card. Huge thank you and shout out to Sarah Jane, our Super Dino Mode Patreon.